Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, I want to share some thoughts with you about the essence of a controlling spirit, right? Like, what does that really mean? And the reason the reason I chose the terms essence and spirit are because I believe that control is caused by an unidentified influence. It's really hard to pinpoint, put your finger on, to identify, however you want to spin it. It kind of eludes us, right? It's like, or eludes us, I guess rather. It's just hard to really figure it out. But I feel like the more we learn, the more empowered we're going to be, and therefore the more we're going to be able to consciously construct that protective barrier, that shield, right, against a very exploitative world. I mean, it's just our reality, unfortunately. People that are just very selfish and very inconsiderate, and even though they may appear to be considerate and cooperative or whatever, they have these ulterior motives, right? That's what we want to shield ourselves against the wolves in sheep's clothing. So trying different ways, using different lenses to understand the controlling essence, that's operating in a person, right? Or the controlling spirit within a person who is out to manipulate and exploit other people. Understanding that is only going to serve to benefit us, right? So let's dive into this, and I hope that y'all enjoy the message. I spent a good bit of time on it this morning, and when I was starting out with my notes, it's kind of like, when you get up in the morning, it's like some mornings it takes a little bit longer to get your brain chugging along than others. It was a morning like that for me. I woke up fairly early, but I just couldn't, I was talking in my video yesterday about how sometimes you just I feel like the Holy Spirit, or the numinous divine aspect of reality, it's like it just floods you sometimes with what you need, with that inspiration, that manna that you can just, it just pours out of you so fast you can't even get it out, in your journal. You can't even write it down. But then other days when you're like, okay, I'm ready, it's like, where is it? And so I was having a morning like that. So when I was starting out on this topic, I didn't really know for sure if I was going to be able to move forward with it or not, because there's sometimes, it's kind of rare, but every now and then I'll start on a topic that comes to me and then it doesn't come to fruition. It just kind of comes to a standstill. But this actually just took a little bit longer, but it really came together for me. So I'm really excited to share that with you all. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. So the question is, right, what is, or how can we identify the essence of a controlling spirit? A couple of things I feel like play a big part, and we'll open with those, but we're just going to touch on them and then we're going to move on, okay? The first is, it's possible that a person may come to the point of operating in a controlling manner, having the desire to control people because of some kind of conditioning that they received in their childhood, through their family of origin or whatever, that is operating through this person unconsciously. It's like driving them. It's a motivating factor. And, all of us on the outside, see them as being very controlling, but they don't see that within themselves. It's possible that could be what's driving a controlling person, some kind of unconscious conditioning, okay? The second thing would be possibly a spiritual being from another realm, right? From the spiritual realm. And when you say things like that, do you ever feel like, especially if you say them out loud, do you ever feel like it just totally seems like complete fantasy, and yet that this is a big part of religion and spiritual beliefs, is to believe in angelic or demonic beings, these other invisible, influential beings, right? So that's for you to decide, obviously, but that could be certainly another driving factor to motivate a person to be controlling, right? So we have conditioning that's stemming from some part of their unconscious, part of their psyche, that drives them to be controlling and they're unaware of it. And or influence from the spiritual realm, right? So and it could just be both. It doesn't have to be either or, right? But I want to examine the cause of a controlling spirit a little differently, because sometimes logical breakdowns, it's like you have all these ideas floating in your mind, and it's like sometimes when you approach things logically and you break them down logically, it slows down this whirlwind, this swirling effect that that happens when you try to have an expanded mindset and you approach everything that way, and you're like, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be all of this, it could be these two and not these. It's like, it can just sort of, kind of disorient you, really. So just grounding yourself in some logic sometimes is really good. And so that's what we're going to do, okay? Like I said, it slows all this down enough to grasp. And then when we get to that point where we can actually grasp something, then we can take it in, meditate on it, marinate on it, and it can actually have an impact in our life. And so that's what we're going to do. That's our motivation today. So, I believe that we are wired for survival. It's just an innate part of this human experience. It's primal, you might say, that we are wired for survival. And belonging is important to us because of this, okay? This survival instinct, right? To belong. That's what kind of secures that, whether consciously or unconsciously. And yet, this inherent need within us all to belong can become corrupted. Okay? Let me expand on this. If someone feels they don't belong, okay, like considering that it's a basic need, if we consider that, like food, right, then it stands to reason that they would enter into a mode of operating from desperation. Okay, so one way this can manifest, if, like, say a child was kind of just the black sheep of the family, or ridiculed or mocked or bullied or minimized or dismissed or abused, whatever it was within a person's early years, that are crucial for your healthy development, right? Whatever happened to make a person as an adult be desperate to belong, this is one way we can look at this, okay? They can turn out to be people pleasers, again, because of abusive parents or their family origin, whatever, because they were made to believe that they're unworthy of belonging, because that was maybe their experience in their early, impressionable years. Maybe they were made to believe that they were not worthy of feeling that comfort of belonging to a family or collective or whatever, right? And it's interesting to consider, people pleasing as still kind of like manipulation, but it's more like, please love me, and please be kind to me. Like whatever I need to do, I'll totally self-sabotage and self-sacrifice, to whatever your needs and wants are, to just be accepted, to just feel worthy of belonging, right? So that's one way that desperation, wanting to belong to that degree, can manifest. The other way it can manifest is just like somebody starving for food, right? Or even starving from like a drug addiction. If they've run out, they might be driven to steal. So, so also might someone desperate, I don't know, my notes are crazy, but let me take a minute here and look at them. Okay, so yeah, just like that, just like someone, we're kind of like using this analogy, just like somebody who's starving for food, or they've run out of their drugs and they're addicted and they're starving for that, right? They may be motivated to steal. So just like that, someone who is desperate for belonging might be motivated to steal that as well. Okay, so this is going to be the foundation of how we're looking at this, the lens that we're looking at this through for the rest of the message. Okay, I'm talking about people who are the wolves in sheep's clothing, who deceive us, right? Consciously. All right, so in other words, in the first example I gave you all, the people who are people pleasers, you know, just begging to be loved and to be accepted, they're operating mostly from conformity, from conforming to the other person's desires or the group's desires, right? At the total exclusion of themselves, right? But the second group, does not self-sabotage for belonging. That's a big key difference here, okay? So they're stealing this belonging within a group or with a person, okay? So why would they not just get it the honorable way? Why would they not achieve belonging the honorable way? It's because they're not like truly worthy of it, okay? Because of their lifestyle choices, all right? So, and again, instead of self-sabotaging like the people-pleasing people, they control. That's how they achieve the belonging, okay? So in order to belong truly to a collective of any kind, you need to be trustworthy, right? You need to be considerate of others. It's kind of like the whole philosophy in the Bible of love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the qualities you need to really honorably be a part of a group, a family, a circle of friends, a collective of any kind, right? That's the honorable way to belong. So let's take a look at consequences, okay? All right. Consequences for our choices and even our corrupted beliefs and understanding. I don't mean corrupted like criminal-minded kind of corruption. I mean like corrupted like, you know, something that's just in error. You know, there's something wrong with it. Like it's an inaccurate understanding or just an inaccurate belief or whatever, okay? So again, consequences for our choices. Even our corrupted beliefs and understanding serve a purpose, okay? And that purpose is to put some pressure on us to change. In other words, consequences serve a purpose, okay? When we make poor decisions and we face consequences, we take it like just punishment. That's the end all be all, but it's not. If we zoom out, we see the grand design. We understand that every piece of that design serves a purpose, including consequence. Consequence is meant to not punish us, but to teach us, right? And it does that by making us really uncomfortable, by putting this pressure on us. And that pressure is not meant to thrust us into a life of just shame, you know, and self-torture and judgment. It's meant to prompt us to change. That pressure is meant to motivate us to change, okay? And it's pressure that is needed to reform us, okay, to transform us and to heal us. It's like I mentioned before, it's the law of cause and effect, right? And it is part of the divine design because you can find it everywhere, right? So I don't know what put this on my mind earlier, but if you know the to be or not to be speech or soliloquy or whatever it's called, you know, in Hamlet from Shakespeare, to be or not to be. I looked that up earlier and I read it, and it's kind of like I was starting to really get it, and then towards the end, it's using a lot of verbiage that's not, in our modern day, and I kind of was having a hard time putting it together. So I thought, well, I'm just going to ask Google. So I'm going to see what other people think, as far as the meaning of it. And so I looked that up, and essentially it's meant to, and I encourage you to read it. It's really short, but it's meant to represent the fear of the unknown that keeps us here in this earthly experience, even though it's full of suffering. In other words, this is what I found in a couple of different places regarding the meaning of to be or not to be. It essentially means to live or not to live, to remain living in this human experience, or to decide you don't want to do it anymore. Okay, and the point was said that it's literally the fear of the unknown of what comes next when we leave this earthly realm that keeps people. It's that fear that keeps people where they are, even though this life is full of suffering, and it's captured within this. So again, I just encourage you to read it if you have interest. But I share this because, okay, first of all, yes, suffering is inevitable in this human experience, but I think that we can get through it just a little bit easier, not easily, but a little bit easier if we believe that there's purpose to it. Okay, because our life at any point, if you think about it, is a sum of all of our choices up to that point. So if we are suffering more consequences than we would like, we have to understand that to be or not to be is relevant not just at a life or death threshold, but also at these pivotal thresholds throughout our life as well. Okay, so if we get to a place again where we're feeling this pressure of suffering, this intolerable consequence of just where we are at a certain point in our life, that's meant as that threshold to invite us on this journey, to invite us into the hero's journey ourselves. It's an invitation. That's how I see it. It's a threshold. Okay, and so let me give you an example. Someone who finds out that their spouse is a cheater, right? And decides that staying and enduring ongoing betrayal is likely better than the alternative, because the alternative is totally unknown. Okay, and when I say the word unknown, I'm reminded of the Frozen movies and Elsa singing about the unknown and how beautiful it really is, even though it feels very risky, right? We have to understand that we can get comfortable just sitting in consequence, or we can choose the journey of transformation. It's scary. It's not easy, right? So I believe that yes, we can choose the hero's journey. Okay, the important part here is understanding that the path isn't actually a full circle. When you look at the diagram of the hero's journey, it's illustrated in a circle, and we talk about the circle of life and the cyclical nature or cyclical nature of life and death, that it's not just physical. It can just be many times experienced within your own personal life, different seasons in your life or whatever. We think of all this as a circle, right? But I like to think of it more like a swirl. So I'm going to illustrate this with my little simple drawing here, right? So you start off here, and then it's like your starting point is that point of pressure, of suffering, consequence from everything that happened all in here since your birth. Right? And so there's been a lot of different thresholds where we could make choices, right? And so let's just start at this one. Okay, so this threshold is an invitation to change, okay? There's a lot of pressure put on this person from the consequences they've made, and so the choices are stay and continue to suffer and, you know, forego the possibility of a beautiful outcome in your future because it's just simply familiar and comfortable, or be willing to literally step out on faith, right? And then start this hero's journey of transformation. Well, you start out and then very quickly you're heading down here. So you started out because of suffering, and then, oh no, you're going this way, right? It gets even worse. See? But when you make it through this is where the change happens down here. That's where the change happens, okay? And then you start up. And then when you're, you know, at the end of this transformative process, right, this journey here, you don't end up where you were. You end up further up. You end up, you know, elevated, right? Better off at this higher elevation. So, but again, first you have to go down into the underworld, which is in all the fairy tales, myths, and folklore, right? So, you know, when it gets tough, when you're in the underworld, metaphorically, and, you know, the transformation is taking place, what does that really mean? It means the shedding off of, you know, connections that are toxic. It means shedding off aspects of yourself as they come from your unconscious awareness into your conscious awareness, and you're like, man, I can't believe, you know, that I was operating that way, and now I see why I was operating that way, and I have these old thought structures that need to die off because they were, you know, riddled with errors, or, you know, I need to refine, you know, the way I perceive, you know, certain things. It's like that's what it means when you're talking about, you know, doing this work on the journey in that tough part in the underworld, right? And it can get really, really tough. So when I'm always talking about, you know, expanded thinking, that's what I mean. Like, imagine this. Let's say this is you, and you're like, yeah, I'm ready for change. I'm ready, and I'm gonna, you know, be brave, and I'm gonna start on this journey. So here you go. And then when you get down here, all this is so intense that sometimes if you're not careful, all you can see is that. That's it. So we need to be able to remind ourselves to expand or to rise up and see all of it, okay? Because doing that gives you context, okay? You're not just focused on that one part at the bottom. You're not just focused there. You're able to see, you know, maybe not the details of the future, but you understand that there's better things to come. And so when I say context, I looked up that term, and it means the parts of a discourse, or we might say course or journey in this instance, right, that surround a word or a passage and can throw light on its meaning. How beautiful is that? So you're like, oh my God, I just can't take this. You know, whatever. Maybe I need to go back up here and be comfortable, you know, with what I know and what I'm familiar with. And so it can just get super, super painful and tons of pressure down here. But just zoom out and understand, like, oh, okay, now there's light thrown on the meaning of all of it. We can see the parts that surround this part. Oh, there's more parts. You see what I mean? So, you know, we have to, when you hear people say, like, trust the process, that's what that means, okay? So in the underworld, you know, that's the place of the ego death. It's where the person you were when you made certain choices that created certain outcomes or consequences. That's where, you know, in the underworld, that's where that person dies off, okay? Just like in the Bible where it says, you know, it's where, you know, we put off the old man. And it does take time. It does mean isolation and just getting still and quiet, right? It takes effort. So we understand that to get out of our current suffering, which is here, to get out of that, we have to go through more of it, more suffering and more pressure first in order to be reborn, okay? But the treasure is that we emerge new, and it is worth the wait, okay? Because the new you will make better choices, see? okay, going forward. And the new you, because you're making better choices, will experience better effects, cause and effect, or result, okay? A better destiny, a better future, right? So Jesus calls us, through the Christian lens, to be willing to leave it all behind and follow him, right? To pick up your cross, okay? It's burdensome. When you start out on that track, it don't feel good. See, it's not just immediate like relief. So we have to remember that, right? So when I say you're never alone, that's what I'm talking about, right? If you're ready to move on from abusive or toxic situations, connections that are keeping you stuck, right, in a less than desirable situation, then you have to realize that, you'll feel, when you start off on this journey, you're going to feel like you're ripping your safety net away. It's very uncomfortable, okay? And you will feel like this innate, this primitive kind of like pang of panic. You'll feel that because belonging is a part of securing your survival, like on this unconscious level, okay? It's just innate within us, okay? So you're going to feel this pang of panic, even if you're leaving a bad situation or something that's holding you back, situation that's holding you back. If it can even mean leaving doubt behind, leaving behind a lifestyle that you're better than, a lifestyle that is really keeping you from your full potential. Or it can mean leaving an abusive relationship, or a group of friends that are really jealous of you and they're constantly making fun of you and putting you down, and you've just succumbed and accepted that role because you just really want to belong that bad, or whatever it is you're leaving behind. See, so many different things you can be leaving behind, so think about it. But you will feel like you are totally ripping that safety net away, and you will feel panic, okay? Even if it's bad for you, what you're leaving. Because suddenly you don't have that old familiar sense of belonging that you once did. But, okay, at some point in this underworld, that panic's going to kind of subside a little bit. It'll dissipate, all right? And you'll start to realize how costly it was for you. It's like you were purchasing your belonging by tolerating things you should have never tolerated, or by making yourself smaller, or by foregoing your potential. Whatever it was too costly. You'll realize that, right? You were maybe exploited by some people. You may realize how fake a relationship really was, or how empty it was. There was no substance, right? And this sometimes comes to the surface when you experience like health problems, or some kind of big issue in your life, and suddenly there's nobody there for you, or the people that you thought that you belonged to this group or family, it's like, where are they at when you really need them now? You're always there for them, but you're strong and independent for the most part, but yet you thought that you had belonging here, but they're not going to bother themselves to be there for you when you really need them, see? So a lot of things really become apparent when you're on this journey, and that will strengthen you. These revelations, even though they're painful, it's more pangs of not panic, but of hurt, but they'll strengthen you, because you're now choosing to allow yourself to see reality for what it is, even if it hurts. So we come to understand that people securing a sense of belonging with you through lies and deception are unwilling to die to their old self, okay? They're unwilling to change, you might say, their sinful ways, okay? In other words, they want their cake and to eat it too. These are the people who pretend to be, in a marriage, but really that's a facade, and they're living a double life, as an example, Okay, there's a lot of examples, but there's one. So these bonds of belonging were serving as fig leaves for them and serving as chains for you, see? And you finally realize it. So when you do realize it, it's like you're ready. You're ready to dive head first into the darkness, into the unknown, right? Because you're ready for that next chapter. So the beauty is in realizing where you truly belong, to what collective, to what tribe, okay? It's not that we shouldn't want to belong. That's, God put that desire in our heart for a reason. It's just we have to learn where we belong. And it's not necessarily the family we were born into. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Okay? But yeah. So even in between, right, like during your journey, when you leave behind where you thought you belonged, you leave that and you're on this journey. Between that point and the point that you find where you really belong, right? This is what I've come to realize. You're actually not ever alone because you're connected to your true tribe in spirit. We're always connected in spirit. It's just that to see that manifest in our physical reality, it takes time for that to come together as we all go on our journeys to bring it about, to bring it to fruition, right? So that's the goal. So how awesome is that, right? I believe that we are united in spirit, even when we feel like we're alone. So, and eventually we'll see that this is true. So, to wrap this up, I want to share with you out of this book right here. And I haven't looked through it a lot, but it's like it says a year of Zen, literally. So every day has a meaning. So this actually fell out, but from yesterday, right? This was really cool. It says, I have only a small flickering light to guide me in the darkness of a thick forest. Up comes a theologian and blows it out. And that's from Dennis Diderot, or Diderot. And look, nothing against theology. I love it. I love the study of God and everything. Myself, obviously, I talk about it a lot on my channel, but I believe that this is really important for us to look at for just a minute, because that's kind of like describing what the experience is when you fall under the influence of a controlling person, right? You start out with a small flickering light that's guiding you. In other words, your own inner guiding light, your own sense of direction in this world. And then, this controller wants to just take over and become that for you and take the place of that and tell you what to do and where to go and how to be. See? And so when it says up comes the theologian and blows it out, that's what I'm reminded of. Okay? Now, today's message was like, I skipped over that. But tomorrow's message, since I'm not going to be filming tomorrow, I thought this is really tied in well, and I'm going to share this with you all. So it says, see what you are. See what you are. Don't ask others. Don't let others tell you about yourself. Look within and see. And that is from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. I hope I said that right. Yes, that's the key, again, to turn internally. It's in here, right? Not out here. So when you have somebody that seems to be a know-it-all come along and they want to blow out that flickering light within you and say, I got this, let me take care of you, but really that means controlling you. Okay? That's not the way. That's not the path. So we do have to look within. So when we do go on this journey and we reclaim ourselves, we reclaim that internal light, right? And we get real with ourselves, and it's hard. The old man falls away, and all the things that are wrong for us, the relationships that are wrong for us, the lifestyle that's wrong for us, our poor choices, our poor decision making that stems from poor paradigms that we've been operating from. All of that gets dismantled. All of that gets, destroyed and pulled down and done away with, right? That's the transformative process. As we're doing that work in the darkness, that fire inside is getting rekindled. That's what's really happening, okay? So you think about a flicker. It's just sort of weak, right? It's flickering. It can be doused out easily. Well, when we're doing this work and we're rekindling that fire inside of us, right, then it becomes this really strong flame. That's the beauty of the work. And it can't be put out. It can't be doused, okay? So I hope that this has been encouraging for you. I do want to leave you with the inspiration of that last quote that I shared with you all, to seek the answers within, right? That it's a personal journey. It's one that a loving person would never ask you to sabotage for you and for they to belong together. Instead, both would have a healthy, blazing fire, a numinous flame within, and be able to walk alongside one another on the same path, right, together, and kindling their own internal fire and inspiration and life force energy and motivation, as well as doing the same for one another, right? So I hope, again, this has given you a lot of insights. It's just another way to look at some things. I hope that it got the wheels turning for you. And I just thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day. And I'll see you again very soon.